ASMR to start off the show. How you doing tonight, Allison?
I'm doing well because someone allowed me to bring an uncapped drink into the room.
Into the studio. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a rare thing, but I know I have to keep you in drink tonight because you're going to be reading a lot.
I hope they're super small.
Most of them are not. The first one is on the small side, the text, but the rest of them are.
I've got my bifocals. I'm good.
Not so much. So, yeah, tonight we're just going to do a variety of stories. I found a folder on my computer labeled Antique Weird News, which was apparently a series I was planning on doing, or maybe segments on the show or something. The folder's a couple years old, and we never did anything with it, so I just brought all the articles.
Weren't you doing that for Wes?
I was doing Wildman articles for Wes,
okay.
but these are not wild. These are decidedly other things. So
okay.
These are old newspaper articles about weird stuff that I brought here for us to cover on tonight's show. A little something different. Before we get into that, I want to remind everybody, episode 500 is coming up quickly. And in fact, this being $4.99.
You're manipulating the numbers.
Yes, 500 will be the first episode in December. I'm taking next week off. There will be a patron episode in between, though, that will be 501. So episode 501 will be released before 500. But don't worry, 500 is coming. That'll be for everybody. That's coming up. And speaking of episodes...
Linear time and numbers are no longer valid. I am 23.
I'll take 35.
Yeah. I'd take 40.
Speaking of episode 500, that's the Pine Ridge audio, the interviews we did about Bigfoot up on Pine Ridge Reservation. And we are supporting a nonprofit there called Kaya.life. That's our way of paying them back a little bit for the stories they shared with us. So it's Kaya.life, Kiya.life. If you can afford to give something, please do. All right, Allison.
All right.
Speaking of Wes and Sasquatch Chronicles.
Yes.
In the early days of Sasquatch Chronicles, they were very anti-woo, and they referred to such people as flute players. If you were on the woo side of Bigfoot, they would call you a flute player. This article is called The Invisible Flute Player, but it is not about one of those kind of flute players. It's from the Washington Standard, Olympia, Washington, from November 7th, 1879.
Washington would be where a majority of flute players would live, I would think. A strange story is told by the peasants of Holstein of an invisible flute player who is said to have haunted about 50 years ago a farmhouse situated near the River Elbe. Some of the children of the farmer who owned the house are still alive. The mysterious affair commenced in a cabbage garden behind the house. There the people often heard flute playing, but no one could make out whence it came, until at last he took up his abode in the house altogether. Sometimes he played his flute in the sitting room, sometimes in one of the bedrooms, at other times in the cellar or in the garret. Occasionally also he paid a visit to a neighboring house. The people on the farm became quite used to him, and when the children or the servant lads and lasses were disposed to enjoy a little dancing, they would just name a certain tune or sing a bar or two of it and ask him to play it, and directly they heard the desired tune. When the milkmaid was occupied in the dairy, she sometimes took an apple in her hand for fun and said, "Now, my boy, play me a nice air, and thou shalt have an apple." In a moment the apple vanished out of her hand, and the music commenced. In the course of time, however, the invisible flutist, which I believe is technically a flautist, became very intrusive, and at last he proved quite a nuisance. One night he would amuse himself by breaking all the windows in the house. Another night he had his gambols in the kitchen, turning everything topsy-turvy, and at midday, when the family had sat down to dinner, it sometimes happened that the large dish of stew before them, from which all were eating, was emptied in an instant by an invisible hand. They would then jump up and down around the room, breaking the air with their spoons, and when they had at last driven the fellow into a corner of the room, suddenly they heard him spitefully playing his flute in another corner. Spitefully playing.
Spite flute.
In short, the annoyance became quite unbearable. There was no peace in the house. The farmer everywhere expressed the wish that he could find somebody who had the power to expel the invisible flute player, he did not mind the expense. At last there came a clever man from the neighboring town who offered to settle the matter. He only wanted to know beforehand whether he should show and banish the flutist in real figure or in the figure of a poodle. The farmer said, "I'd rather not see him at all. Here are $10. All I want is to get rid of him and to have peace in my own house." By means of queer rhymes and smoke, the clever man from town actually succeeded in driving out the troublesome guest, and no mysterious flute playing has been heard since on the farm. I don't know what to make of that at all.
Flute playing spirit. Seems fey-like.
Yes.
But
there is a poltergeist air here in the tricksy things he did, eh?
True. Yes, smashing windows and such.
The true invisible jukebox.
So I guess that's a German story, I guess, right? Holstein, peasants of Holstein. So it's probably a German story that was printed in this.
Yeah, because they mentioned the Elbe too, right?
Yeah.
I'm drinking apple cider to just be on theme.
All right, we're going to go from Washington State
Mm-hmm.
back to Pennsylvania here. The house is haunted. An old man's specter makes living there uncomfortable. A canine ghost also. Both inhabitants of the spirit land play pranks, to which the residents of the house naturally object, and they decide to leave. This is from the Times, Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, November 19th, 1883.
But this comes from Frenchburg, Kentucky. I guess it's just being reprinted in the... Miss Josephine Holloman, a much-respected maiden lady who a short while ago leased what is known as the Old Brundridge Place, which is situated a mile or two down from this town, made something of a sensation lately by appearing at the office of the agent who leased the place to her and demanding back her money and giving the old mansion back over to the lawyer. He refused to return the money and endeavored to persuade the lady to keep her contract, but she declined to even hear of this and left, threatening to bring suit for the recovery of the sums she paid for the house. She alleges that the place is haunted and that she is so terrified by the specter of an old man that her life is unendurable. With her live two nieces who confirm her story and various friends who have visited her testifying to have seen the ghost. She says, "Before moving into that house, I was as great a skeptic as lives on such subjects, and nothing but the evidence of my own eyes would have convinced me that there was something as a ghost that disregards locks and bolts and comes and goes, now invisible and then growing out of the shadows before my very eyes. I found the old place very dilapidated and with only a heap of old moth-eaten furniture when I took it. But I'm not a New England woman for nothing, and in a little while I had made it a comfortable enough home. But one day shortly after we had gotten settled, my niece Mary called to me from her room upstairs. 'Aunt Josephine, here is a man looking for you. Who is he?' I said. I answered, surprised as there being a man upstairs looking for me. 'I do not know,' she said, and I ran up to see for myself, but I could see no one in any of the rooms nor in the hallway. I questioned the servants as to whether any man had gone down the back stairs, but they had all been sitting on the porch in the rear, and no one could have passed by them without their having seen them. I was completely puzzled and alarmed as well at the thought of someone perhaps concealed in the house. Mary's story was that she had been braiding her hair before her mirror. When the door back of her opened and looking about, she had seen an old man in black standing in the doorway. He did not seem to see her, but stood for a moment gazing about the room, then backed out, saying in a low voice, 'I can't find her. Where has she gone?' And then he was gone. Down the hall, the girl thought, and she called to me. On the next night I came into the sitting room to look for a book I was reading, and I saw kneeling on the rug before the hearth a man warming his hands. His face was turned to the fire, but I could see that it was that of one in bad health or trouble, and his eyes were the most sunken I have ever seen in any head, with a sort of dull fire in their hollow depths. As I stood staring at him, I found all at once that there was nothing between me and the fire. But where could he have gone so quickly and without my seeing him? I could not tell. I now began to feel seriously worried at these strange concurrences, though I still did not think they denoted anything supernatural. But one day, soon after my vision, I was startled to hear a scream from a small room, or rather a good-sized closet I had made use of as a linen room, and on running to the spot found my house girl half fainting and so badly frightened as to be hardly able to speak. When she could, She told me that she had opened the closet door to get out some linen that was needed, and to her horror, she saw a man's body swinging from a hook in the ceiling. He was quite dead, she said, with his eyes wide open and staring at her in an awful manner. To see for myself, I flung open the door, but there was nothing unusual to see, and I told her that it was probable that her imagination had played her a trick, but she persisted in her story and gave me a description of the phantom that tallied exactly with that of the man I myself had seen, and I had forbidden the girls, my nieces, to speak of that to anyone. Then began a series of occurrences that has ended in making the house nearly untenantable. We have come across that old man's spirit in the hallways, in the garden, and found him in all of our rooms. He haunts the kitchen for days together, and we are never able to keep a servant after they have seen him. Generally he comes alone, but several times he has a big black dog at his heels, and every night we can hear the old fellow walking about the house with that animal or an animal ghost following and howling so dismally that sleep is well nigh impossible. We find marks of dirty paws on our dressing tables, the dining one, and even on our dresses. Our own dogs have left us entirely, but before they ran away, one, a fine setter I was very fond of, was found in the stable with his neck broken, and the marks of some dog's teeth in him, though he was locked in his kennel where no earthly dog could have gotten to him. All this may sound easy to bear, but who wants to live in a house where such queer things are taking place? I do not, and nothing will induce me to occupy it along with the denizens who have held it before my time. The old Brundage mansion has long borne a shady reputation in the county, various stories being afloat concerning the queer sights and sounds that have been seen and heard from its walls. It formerly belonged to a family named Carter, who lived like recluses, and regarding whom little was known beyond the fact that each member seemed to be at feud with the others. The last event that is known to have taken place there was the murder of one brother by another, after which the murderer killed himself and persuaded his only sister to do the same. The mother then ran away from home in a fit of madness and was found dead in an adjacent field soon afterwards. The father lived on there alone for some years, when he too disappeared, leaving, however, a will specifying that if he did not return in 10 years, the property was to go to a distant relative in the far west, to whom it still belongs.
That's a pretty creepy one.
That's a very creepy one.
Yeah. I have expected the old man to be wearing checkers or or plaid.
Yeah, and they said that he walked into the room and he didn't appear to see her.
Mm-hmm.
He was just looking around.
Yeah, but then when he's swinging there, and then the black dog ghost as well.
Oh, I can't abide that.
That killed their animals. I mean, that's pretty scary stuff. A lot of crossover with when Bigfoot is haunting people's properties, really. The dogs being tormented and going missing and so forth. This is from the Buffalo Inquirer, Buffalo, New York, from the 16th of August, 1906. Huge balloon in sight and vanishes. Airship occupants make mysterious signals with a light. Finally floats beyond human gaze. New York, August 16th. No trace could be found this morning of the huge balloon which floated over New York last evening, while its occupants gave mysterious signals with a light. The balloon was first noticed at the Battery. It seemed to have come out of the haze over the ocean. It swept up the bay and seemingly took a course straight for the Battery. Then it hung motionless in the air for some time, while thousands of persons gathered and gaped at it. Next, it started in a westerly direction and sailed over the Hudson, after which it came back to Broadway and stopped again over City Hall Park. It finally sailed toward New Jersey and disappeared from sight, taking a course toward Fort Lee. That's one I don't think we covered in our airship show, back when we did the airship one.
But it sounds kind of familiar. It's like...
Yeah, I mean, they were all so similar. But, yeah, they're flashing mysterious lights from the airship. That's interesting.
I mean, they could be, right?
It could be. Yeah, I
could
guess.
Be a balloon.
1906, yeah.
With mirrors or something.
Yeah, it could be. But it's just, it's interesting that they have this object in the sky that's flashing mysterious lights. Speaking of airships, Have fun with this one.
Oh no, it's not. There's not like a lot of words of.
No, it's just small and it's not that dark. This is from the Evening News from Ada Pontotoc, Oklahoma.
From Oklahoma.
From the Evening News from Oklahoma, the 1st of July, 1907. Here's a weird tale. Queer brand of liquor must be used in Tennessee. They always used to blame it on alcohol back then.
Not a bad idea. Walter Stevenson, while out training a pair of bloodhounds near the Dykeman Springs, was subjected to a unique experience, says the Nashville American. He was just finishing a long chase with his dogs and sat down on a log to rest when he espied upon the eastern horizon a speck which he took to be a large kite. He paid little attention to the object and shut his eyes temporarily to other scenes. Soon his attention was attracted to a whirring noise, and looking upward he saw that the speck which he had a few moments before discovered in the eastern sky had approached him almost directly over him, and that the object was in reality a huge balloon, but of a pattern and an appearance he had never in his life before seen. He discovered that the floating mass was rapidly approaching the earth. Of a sudden, the observer says, strains of music calculated to charm the spheres burst from the balloon, which circled round and finally landed at Dykeman Springs. A number of strange people emerged from the car, which was closely curtained with a substance that glistened in the sunshine and temporarily burst through the obscuring clouds, and all going to the big flowing spring, knelt by it in a supplanting attitude, and so remained for a minute or more. Mr. Stevenson says that while this was going on, he sat quietly within speaking distance, and when the strange visitors arose for them to feed, he supposed their devotional exercises were over. He asked if he might be permitted to inquire who they were and what was their mission. He said that instantly a veil was lifted by one of the company, and the benign face of a lady showed from underneath and said in German, "Haben Sie beten? Did you pray?" And instantly all were aboard the airship in a minute or two and were gone in a westerly direction. Mr. Stevenson says that the incident left an impression upon him that he will never forget. While he knows that it was some human invention, it looked and the music sounded more like that of angels than of mortals.
See, that's super interesting. That's so much like, so many of these contactee UFO accounts. The angelic music.
And the whirring.
Whirring.
Yeah, that sounds like...
Yeah, absolutely.
And what year was that? That was
1907. So I think these were a little bit later than the airship show we were doing was like the 1890s, I think. So that's...
It's interesting, too, that they said he gets out of a car, because even at that point, they did not call like present-day automobiles or cars. They did not refer to those as cars. If anything, they refer to them as like machines.
Right, but did he mean like a train car?
Yeah, that's what it probably meant, like that.
That hung from the balloon or something.
Mm-hmm. And the fact that like the only foreign language he could possibly guess that they were speaking was German.
Yeah, it's just... Which
is doubtful in my mind that that's what they were speaking.
There's elements of high strangeness to it that I really like in that one. It rings true.
The strange patterns on the, like, what was it, camouflage?
Yeah, like, who knows? Yeah.
Okay, how about something that someone's eyes could actually read without having to psychically discern the...
I'll try this one. This is from the Perry County Democrat.
In our own blessed Perry County?
Yes, from Bloomfield, Perry, Pennsylvania. On the 6th of November, 1872. The Ghost. For several weeks past, our citizens have been considerably excited over what purports to be a ghost. That there is something of the kind, there is no longer a doubt. But who it is, or what are its intentions, of course nobody knows. Any of our readers who visited old John Robinson's show when it was exhibited in this place will remember of having seen, near the close of the performance, what they termed Ku Klux men in disguise. Do you know John Robinson? Is that one?
The circus, yeah.
Is it a circus? Mm-hmm. This ghost is described by those who have witnessed it as being dressed in a similar manner. It has made its appearance in different parts of town, at different hours of night, and has been watched, shot at, and otherwise ill-treated. So much so as to leave the impression on the minds of some of our citizens that it cannot be harmed. Business of all kinds is dull in town at night, most of the timid portion of our population being afraid to venture out after nightfall. On Saturday night last, several braves armed themselves with pistols, knives, clubs, and other deadly weapons, and resolved to capture the ghost. They took up a position under the little bridge that crosses the gutter near the M.E. Church on Main Street, and laid for the ghost. A short time afterwards, the ghost put in an appearance and went for them. The braves, almost frightened out of their wits, broke and ran in all directions, continuing their flight until they reached their homes, went to their little beds, and securely secreted themselves under the quilts which their dear mothers and wives had so carefully placed on their beds the morning previous. They have since made up their minds that laying for the ghost is a bad job. Some of our citizens accuse a party at college of being the ghost. Others attract the blame to one of our own citizens. At all events, playing ghost is a very serious amusement, and if the person who performs the act should receive a piece of lead in the shape of a bullet in his body, he can blame no person but himself. A lot of these sort of like town ghost stories where they shoot, they very much have a Spring-Heeled Jack kind of feel to them, you know? These type of things are appearing all over. This one is from the York Daily. We're getting closer, Alice. York, Pennsylvania, February 1st, 1910. Just ignore the crossed out things and replace that one with that word there.
Okay. That's York. Good pay was offered to Jacob Shoemaker by the owner of the old Miller homestead on Pompton Hill, Jacksonville, New Jersey, supposedly haunted by a perfect pippin of a ghost if Jacob would spend a night there and lay the apparition. So Shoemaker repaired to the mansion, accompanied by his coal-black dog. Shoemaker was valiantly exploring the recesses of the place upstairs when he heard blood-curdling howls from the dog, who was downstairs. Shoemaker groped his way downstairs, and a great white form rushed toward him, its eyes blazing. Shoemaker sped toward the village, the ghostly form following behind. Reaching his home, he pounded once on the door and fell in a faint. His wife found him there. Bending over him was a dog, resembling his in every detail except that this dog was snow-white. After Shoemaker was revived, he said the dog must have seen the Miller homestead ghost and turned white from shock.
So we have a black dog that is not a supernatural black dog in this one, but seemed to not be a black dog for very long.
That's interesting because there was like a great sort of racist hubbub about that time, about, well, the late 1800s through the early 1900s, at a time when people were not entirely sure how race worked, and where people who had albinism or it's like the concept that one person could turn into another race was brought up, and that was something that was like heavily interested to people because I think it counteracted sort of their racist sensibilities. Like if it's possible for someone to transcend their race somehow, what does that mean for the rest of us? There's also this idea of maternal impression. So like,
yeah, I remember you talking about that. So
like if you were scared by a dog and then your child was exceptionally hairy or something, it was because of this great fright that happened where you like a hairy dog was with you.
Right. Yeah.
And so, I mean, ultimately it's always like, you can pretty much always fall back on like, it's the woman's fault or racism in almost every article if you need an explanation. But it is interesting to watch society try to figure these things out.
Yeah. Well, it's kind of like the wild man thing.
Like, how could he possibly be? Is it possible to live on your own? Like, what happens when you aren't part of a society?
Not only that, but the change post-Darwin, you know, you have this very kind of different idea post-Darwin that these are people that are just growing hair all over their body. These were, you know, the residents of town, you know, regular people that are growing hair all over their bodies because they're reverting to the wild. You know?
Yeah, there's sort of like a de-evolution kind of concept.
Yeah. And also after that comes the gorillas and everything else. But it's really interesting how science of the times informs these things and misinforms them.
Oh, yeah, and how, like, there's a kernel of scientific truth, but without knowing the larger truth, it's almost more damaging.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah. Yeah. I'd like to thank our patrons. Thank you so much, patrons. Thank you for everything you do. If you like Strange Familiars and you'd like to help us out, you can become a patron at Patreon. Patreon.com/strangefamiliars. All of our patrons get commercial-free versions of the weekly shows as well as extra shows every month. We do at least one exclusive full episode of Strange Familiars for our patrons every month. Sometimes we do more. To check out all the options, you can go to patreon.com/strangefamiliars. There's also an option via Apple Podcasts. It's called Patron of the Strange over there. And Apple Podcast subscribers also get the commercial-free shows weekly and the extra shows monthly. And once again, I'd like to thank our patrons, no matter where they're signed up. Thank you so much. We could not make Strange Familiars without your help. Does the name Louise Fazenda mean anything to you, Allison?
Should it?
She was an actress. She was a movie actress.
Louis, and what era are we?
Silent era.
How do you spell her last name?
Fazenda.
I don't know. I don't know that I've ever seen a picture. I mean, I probably would have seen a picture first, maybe.
I looked her up. She didn't look overly familiar, but you know, so many of those actresses
they look very similar.
Similar look. And I tried to look up more information on her after I found this little article. And I found lots of articles on her, like going into the 1960s at least, but none that really addressed this particular thing. Like, I wanted more information on what this article talks about. This is from the Omaha Daily Bee. That's Omaha, Nebraska. June 29th, 1919. Movie actress takes all-night walks in woods, communes with elves. Don't you laugh.
No, I didn't know what was going to happen, so took me aback.
Louise Fazenda has just finished one of her wild woman walking trips. Louise insists that in another incarnation she was a big gray timber wolf. Every once in a while, when the moon is full, or isn't full anyhow, once in a while, Louise hearkens to the call of the wild and goes out for an all-night walk through the mountain canyons near Los Angeles. She says the brooks are full of elves who sing to her, and that all the little wild people of the woods, the coyotes and the red foxes and the night owls, prowl around too. One night she took two of the lovely girls who appear in the Paramount Senate comedies with her to hear the night noises of the wilderness. They came back carrying the Never Again sign. They said they heard rats and rushed for a vacant ranger's cabin for moral support and spent the night sitting on the departed ranger's kitchen table with their skirts tucked up around them. Louise Fazenda sounds like my kind of lady. I could find no more, lots of articles about her and about her comedies and what she was doing and stuff, and nothing else that mentioned her communion with elves in the woods.
Did you check, like, furry conventions?
I don't think they had them back then.
Oh, they did, Tim. They were just called things, different names back then.
Several of our stories that we covered in tonight's show so far have featured animal ghosts.
Yeah.
And this article is called The Myriad Spooks of the Animal World. It's from the Courier Journal, Louisville, Kentucky, July 12th, 1903. Now, while it appeared in that paper, it also appeared in lots of other papers. So I'm not sure
if Kentucky is the really
what the original one was, because it appeared all over. I found the one that seemed to, I could clip the text and it would reproduce best for us. Here you go.
All right. All over the world, men believe that ghostly animals as well as ghostly humans walk this earth. Weird stories of the rolling calf, the pale horse, the spectral elephant, the ghost shark, the phantom whale, and other zoological wraiths. Animals are supposed to return in the spirit form to haunt their tormentors. A man shrieking with terror and trembling in every limb ran onto the veranda of a planter's house in Trinidad one evening and flung himself at the planter's feet in a dead faint. "What's the matter, Bob?" asked the planter, after he had brought the man to and given him a stiff drink of whiskey. Then we're going to just insert like a paragraph of absolutely racist back and forth jargon between these two people.
Give us the gist of the conversation without the racism of the time.
He saw something scary.
Okay. Well, there you go.
Nothing could persuade the man that he was not doomed or that he had only seen a harmless and perfectly natural white calf. He fell in a state of hopeless melancholy and soon afterwards died of a slight attack of malarial fever from pure funk, as the doctor said. And then the next part is about the rolling calf. The rolling calf is the most famous of the many animals ghosts firmly believed in by the people of the West Indies. Indeed, throughout the world, there is no animal ghost which causes people greater uneasiness. It is a white calf of enormous size, as big as an elephant, if some accounts may be trusted. Its eyes blaze like the two coals and roll fearsomely from side to side, hence its name. A heavy chain encircles the body and drags behind him on the ground for many yards, clanking weirdly in the stillness of a tropical night.
Hold on a second. Note, glowing eyes, but also someone recently asked me, the old trope of ghosts rattling chains. Like, is that a thing? Is that really a thing in the paranormal? It really is. Like, people do hear rattling chains sometimes. And so here we have another instance of that. Go ahead.
The apparition is supposed to presage death, or at least some terrible misfortune. And, of course, nearly everyone who meets a white calf straying at night in the jungle or on a lonely mountain road imagines that he has seen the dreaded rolling calf. There is only one way to render the phantom harmless. When it appears, a knife or a machete must instantly be struck in the ground with the edge toward the calf. Then, like Mephistopheles held back by the sign of the cross, it cannot approach or do any evil. On this account, West Indians will seldom go out at night without a machete.
So there we have iron. It's kind of like a fae thing, They drive a knife in the ground. Well, that was how in more than one fairy story they would keep the door to fairy open, as they would put a dagger in the ground. That would keep the door open. So interesting.
And then this last one is entitled The World's Belief in Spectral Beasts.
Oh, that's not the last one. It keeps going.
Oh.
The rest of those papers is this article.
Oh, okay. The belief in animal ghosts is common to most savage and barbarian races. Well, we don't believe that anymore.
Yeah, this is, what is it, 1903 or something this article's from?
Yeah. We'd like to think we come a long way there. So there might be a kernel of interest in amongst.
Yeah, let's take the ghost stories and leave out the
racism.
The racism and the xenophobia and all the bad stuff.
It is natural that this should be so because most savages credit animals with souls and a future existence equally with men. They think that after death, the deer pursues the hunter and the deer a shade. Therefore, if they believe that the ghosts of men revisit these pale glimpses of the moon, they must believe, in order to be logical, that fine ghosts of animals do the same. This is the true explanation of the numerous stories of ghostly animals which the traveler hears in all parts of the world. The Native Americans believe that the souls of slain animals went to the happy hunting grounds as well as the souls of slain warriors. But it is not so well known that among certain tribes it was the custom to beg pardon of an animal before killing it, and even to stick the pipe of peace in its mouth if there was time to do so before its spirit fled. This was to prevent the animal from coming back in ghostly form to haunt its slayer. The same superstition may be met with in many other parts of the world. In India, in Assam, in New Guinea, among the Yu-speaking tribes of the west coast of Africa, among the Indians of Venezuela, and in the interior of Madagascar. The people of Assam firmly believe that if a man takes care to beg pardon with due form and ceremony, the ghosts of all the birds and beasts he slays in his life will become his property in the next world. It is rather annoying to an English planter in that country to have a wait for his dinner while his servant goes through elaborate proprietary rites before he kills a chicken. Har har.
Oh, poor Englishman.
Yeah. Oh no, I must wait while someone prepares my dinner. Is that how you feel?
Every night.
This one is called The Pale Horse, and I think we've all heard of the Pale Horse, right?
I mean, we've heard of a pale horse. We don't know if it's the same one.
True. No animal ghost has been more firmly believed in for many centuries by many millions of people than the pale horse. It dates back to the days of Icelandic sagas and Norse legends. Today it is an article of faith with the peasants of Iceland, of the northern part of Norway and Sweden, of some of the northern provinces of Russia, and even with some of the Scottish Highlanders. When a man is about to die, the pale horse, white, shadowy, ghostly, comes out of the dark of night and halts before the door of his house. Then he must arise from his deathbed, drink life's stirrup cup, mount the spectral steed, and ride off to that undiscovered country from whose bourne no traveler returns. In the days when he wrote poetry instead of guiding America's foreign policy, John Hay took the curious myth for the theme of one of his best poems, The Stirrup Cup. Shall we read the poem?
Oh, was it in there?
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
I'm not going to read it in poetry voice.
You want me to read it?
I mean...
It's up to you. I know you don't like poetry.
No, I like poetry. I don't like poetry voice. So I will read it in just a regular person way.
That's the way poetry should be read.
My short and happy day is done. The long and dreary night comes on, and at my door the pale horse stands to carry me to unknown lands. His whinny shrill, his pawing hoof, sound dreadful as a gathering storm, and I must leave this sheltering roof, and joys of life so soft and warm. Tender and warm the joys of life, good friends, the faithful and the true, my rosy children and my wife, so sweet to kiss, so fair to view. So sweet to kiss, so fair to view, the night comes down, the light burns blue, and at my door the pale horse stands to bear me forth to unknown lands.
I like it.
Yeah, I like it.
Might turn it into a song.
I remember ages ago, you had a book like the Pale Rider, it was I remember there was a little skeleton guy on a white horse, like the Pale Horse.
This seems very much like something I would have for sure.
Like a long time ago, like maybe when we first met. It was like a witchy book, like
probably
one of your little paranormal books.
Probably. It sounds familiar, but not so familiar that it's ringing a bell.
Yeah, okay. I'll find it sometime. We'll be like, this is it. This is what I was thinking. It'll have nothing to do with what I'm thinking about. All right, the next one is the spectral elephant. India is full of animal ghosts. From the Himalayas to Cape Comorin, ghost tigers, ghost jackals, and ghost elephants haunt half the jungles of that vast country, if the native may be believed. Here is a typical story. By the beard of my father Sahib, I speak straight words, said an old man. One evening we were hunting wild elephants in the jungle of our Lord. I saw a large tusker alone by a pool. His color was grayish-white, and my heart beat fast, for I thought Allah had been gracious to me and had placed in my hands that greatest of all prizes, a lord white elephant. Cautiously I edged my own tame elephant toward him, hoping that while they made friends, I could bind him fast to a tree by the heel rope. My beast trumpeted in terror and trembled violently, but I goaded him on. And then, when I put my hand on the white elephant, I felt nothing but air. It was a ghost elephant, one of those elephants which come back after death to walk the earth because in this life they had been murdered by men. I fled from the spot, and soon afterward I made a pilgrimage to Mecca to avert the curse, but my elephant fell sick and died. This next article is sort of a segue because this is about when animals haunt their torturers.
As well they should.
Mm-hmm. The Jains, a powerful religious sect in India who devote themselves to caring for animals, teach that any animal which is ill-treated during its earthly life will return in spirit form after death to haunt its oppressor. It will inflict upon him all the torments it has endured and worse. His crops will fail, his children die, his wife prove unfaithful, his enemies triumph over him, and his body be racked with all the manner of aches and pains. Naturally, this doctrine does more to promote kindness to dumb creatures than any society for the prevention of cruelty to animals could do.
Maybe we need more ghost stories.
Yeah. We'll all be vegan. Chinese folklore abounds with stories of the ill-used pet monkey who returns after death to worry the flesh who tormented him in the flesh. This monkey is never seen, only felt and heard. He sits on his former master's bed at night, gibbering at him and pulling his pigtail, or he appears at mealtime and snatches away food as it is being conveyed to the mouth. Madness and death are said to be the inevitable doom of anybody haunted by this most uncomfortable specter. I think he's on your back. We're gallivanting back to Europe now. Travelers in the remoter parts of Germany are pretty sure to come across stories of animal ghosts. Indeed, Germany has a finer crop of all sorts and conditions of ghosts than any other country in the world. Do you think that's why Pennsylvania does too?
Yeah, I mean, I think we have a strong heritage, and people bring their ghost stories and their folklore with them.
They must hitch ride for free because there's no way any of the Pennsylvania Germans would have paid to bring their ghosts with them.
Right, yes.
The most famous of these stories is that of the wild troop of Rodenstein. Before it passed over, as spiritualists say, this troop was a band of robbers who owned the castle of Rodenstein and committed many frightful crimes. To this day, it is said the troop may be heard dashing madly along the road to the castle. Nothing is seen but the hoofbeats and neighing of the horses. The curses of the troopers and the barking of hounds make the peasant shudder as they pass by him on the lonely road.
Well, that sounds like the Wild Hunt, like a variant of the Wild Hunt.
Ghostly flocks of sheep are also frequently seen by the peasants of some parts of Germany, if their word may be accepted. It is supported by several tourists, including an English clergyman. The latter declares that the driver of his carriage got down and found himself in the midst of the animals, the size and beauty of which astounded him. They passed him at an unusual rate, while he made his way through them to find the shepherd. When on getting to the end of the flock, they suddenly disappeared. He then first learned that his fellow travelers had not seen them at all. Although another clergyman who met the spectral muttons declares that he saw a large flock of sheep which stretched quite across the road and was accompanied by a shepherd and a long-haired black dog.
Wait, did they call them spectral muttons?
Yes.
A long-haired black dog.
Yeah.
And a shepherd. Ghostly. That's neat.
As he gazed at the flock, it vanished. Do you think this is like a religious narrative in any way?
It may be, but
like the disappearing sheep, like a loss of faith kind of thing, or am I reading too much into it?
I mean, it could.
They're just the animals that are there.
It could be, yeah.
We're moving to England and Scotland now.
All right.
The ghost lore of England and Scotland abounds in tales of animal specters, but they are generally deceased humans who, for some reason, are compelled to revisit Earth in the form of an animal.
Interesting.
For example, the dog of Mouse, a greyish beast, wandered about Scotland until quite recently, telling everyone it met that it was the ghost of David Sotar, who had murdered a man by means of a dog, and was therefore doomed to walk the earth in the guise of a dog. It used to ask people of their Christian charity to go to the scene of the murder and bury the bones of the victim so that it might be released from its canine shape. Eventually somebody was obliging enough to do this, and the phantom dog appeared no more.
That's a good story.
Yeah, that is a good story.
That feels like a Hellboy story or something.
The old farm laborers of Shropshire firmly believe that human ghosts take the form of bulls. And in Cornwall, that stronghold of quaint legends and strange superstitions, the people say that spirits of the departed return in the shape of a moth to watch over the welfare of those whom they hold most dear.
Oh, I love that one.
Yeah. Many a Cornish woman has seen to weep bitterly at the sight of a moth and heard to declare that it was the spirit of her dead baby.
Oh, that's sad.
That's tragic.
Yeah.
A.T. Quiller Couch, himself a Cornishman, has written a pathetic poem on this superstition. A young lover, whose sweetheart had just died, is sitting in his study thinking sadly of her. A moth flies in through the open window and flutters around him, trying to attract his attention. At last it kisses him on the lips, and irritated by the interruption to his sweetly bitter thoughts, he crushes it to death. Then, too late, he realizes that it was the spirit of his sweetheart come back to comfort him. He has destroyed its earthly tabernacle and condemned it to wander houseless through the void of space to the end of time.
Ooh.
It wasn't her fault.
Yeah, right.
This is about dog and horse phantoms. A well-known English naval officer, who is quoted by Andrew Lang, used to tell a story of a real animal ghost, that is to say, the ghost of a real animal, not a human ghost in animal shape. He says that he was sitting in a room in his country house with a friend when they heard a well-known bark on the stairs outside. "Why, that's old Peter," they said, referring to a favorite dog which had belonged to his host. "Peter died since you were last here," said the naval officer. A fox terrier in the room whined and trembled violently. Presently the door of the room was pushed open, and they heard the pad-pad of a dog's feet on the polished floor. No dog could be seen, but the invisible ghost of one walked over to the hearthrug, shook himself violently, and then flung himself down heavily on the rug. The jingle of the collar could be distinctly heard. A hard-headed Scottish planter, who is now living in Jamaica, declares that he met a ghostly mare 3 nights in succession at the same spot when riding home from his banana fields. Each time his horse stopped dead, quivering with fear, and could only be made to pass the mare by the liberal use of whip and spur. On the second night, the planter tried to flog the mare out of the way, but as his whip curled over her back, it only cut the air. The planter's 2 sons, not to be outdone, swear that their horses were once raced for a mile by a spectral mule which suddenly vanished under their very eyes. But the queerest Jamaican ghost is one which haunts a plantation called Tulloch. It is a spectral horse and buggy, and appears with oppressive regularity 2 or 3 times a week. The clatter of the horse's hooves and the scraping of the buggy wheels on the carriage drive are plainly heard, but when the people look out from the house, there is no horse or buggy to be seen. Hundreds of persons are ready to testify to the truth of this story. And lastly, some fishy ghosts. The non-human ghosts are not confined to dry land. There are stories of phantom sharks in many parts of the world, and one which is supposed to haunt the waters around Nassau is duly vouched for by a cloud of witnesses. It is called the Harbor Master, a nickname applied to most famous sharks, and is incredibly long, some of the imaginative local fishermen even making it a good rival of the sea serpent. It shines with a weird phosphorescent glow even in broad daylight, and is not to be scared away by a noise in the water like ordinary sharks. It has been hooked over and over again, so the fishermen said, but it always vanishes off the hook as it is being pulled over the ship's side. It does not nearly flop off and fall back into the water, it simply vanishes, and there is no splash afterwards. Next day it is found back at the old stand, doing business as usual. Tough old shellbacks who have sailed in whaling vessels are fond of telling yarns of the famous phantom whale. They see a fine spouter and lower away the boats to harpoon it, but their harpoons go clean through the whale as if it were air, and then it vanishes. Some misfortune is bound to befall the vessel soon afterwards. It is a worse omen than sighting Vanderdecken and his spectral ship.
I'm guessing that's a famous ghost ship.
Is that like if you see that, your ship's going to go down kind of thing, if you see a ghost ship?
I'm guessing from context. Animal ghosts. Not surprised. I mean, plenty of black dog stories.
Yeah, that's probably the most common, right?
Yeah.
And maybe they're like animals that we don't think of as like if you saw a ghost worm, you probably wouldn't know the difference, right? They could be everywhere. We have no idea.
Yeah.
Ghost birds, we just think they're regular birds, right?
Yeah.
Unless they flew through you.
Yeah. Well, there's enough stories about weird owls, OWL, not the musician.
Yeah, there are enough stories of him.
Where you wonder, are they ghostly things,
Deer, certainly, right?
Yeah.
The wild hunt stuff, right? That's all filled with like...
The wild hunt has many, many forms, And, we have our own here in Pennsylvania, the Eternal Hunter. And he had a pack of ghostly hounds that hunted with him.
Sometimes that deer in the front of the Jägermeister bottle just disappears.
Well, that is based on St. Hubert, a very famous saint story. That's what
That's why there's a cross on it.
Yeah, St. Hubert stag. St. Hubert was a hunter. He wasn't a saint yet. He was just Hubert at the time.
And his friends called him Hugh.
He was getting ready to shoot the stag, and the glowing cross appeared between its horns. And it said, don't shoot, I am your Lord, or something like that.
How many animal forms has the Christian God taken?
I don't know. That's an interesting Brother Richard. We'll have to get Brother Richard on the line and ask him that.
So I can think of 2 now.
Yeah?
Well, a lamb.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that's kind of a big one.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know that he took that form. It's just like the symbolism, that was applied to him.
Well, isn't that kind of symbolic that the deer is applied to him? Or do you think that he literally was a deer?
Well, look, we're talking about strangeness and weirdness and the other and these tales of miracles and so forth. So I don't know.
There's got to be more animals, right?
I'm certain there are, but this is a Brother Richard question. Speaking of,
This is a Francis question.
we have Brother Richard. I recorded a wonderful conversation with Brother Richard yesterday, and he will be back on an upcoming show. And then again for Christmas. Should get plenty of Brother Richard in December.
It's kind of his season.
Yeah,
right?
yeah, it really is. I'm happy for it.
We should probably plug his book then. It's sitting right here.
It's called Calming the Storms, Meditation as a Path to Inner Peace and Happiness. It's Brother Richard's second book. It's out now. You can get it wherever books are sold. I think he would be happy if you got it at your local bookstore, but it's available on Amazon and everywhere else as well. Allison,
Yes.
you've brought us a really cool curiosity.
I know I'd actually planned this earlier in the day and then had it right in front of my face and then quickly lost it, which is something that I do often.
So it's an instant collection, and I didn't even know such things existed. These are Japanese Christmas cards, and they're beautiful.
They really are. They're incredibly beautiful. Some of them date to the 1970s. My assumption is that most of them are from that time.
Mm-hmm.
I know that because this one is postmarked 11/27/1973, and it was sent from Isamu Takashima, president of the Fuji Valve Company, and that's where a lot of these come from. They're correspondences back and forth between, I believe, a Japanese woman who was living in America,
Okay.
and she must have had some connection to this president of the Fuji Valve Company because he signs his name on all of these Christmas cards. I can't really underscore how beautiful
The printing is amazing on these.
they're like little pieces of artwork. The frequent themes are Fuji and a lot of like temples.
We were thinking of selling them individually, but they're such a nice collection that we're selling them as a collection.
Yeah, I'm going to sell them because I'd like them to kind of stay together. What you do with after I don't know is up to you.
Right.
Yeah, but they are all like distinctly Japanese themed, but Merry Christmas and Happy New Year themed as well. Some of them don't seem to have like an outwardly sort of traditional Western Christmas theme to them.
But there's snow and like...
Yeah, but it's definitely reminiscent of winter. Here's one that it's on fabric, and it looks like Mount Fuji. And the paper inside is like handmade with little specks of other things. There's one in particular that I like where, let's see, when you look at the paper, look at this. This means nothing on the when you're doing radio. Look at that paper.
It's just
There's like
beautiful
an some kind of like not three-dimensional, but like
almost like a
holographic sort of. They look like
cherry blossom.
Cherry blossoms, yeah. And there's some with cherry blossom themes. And are you including this one?
Yeah.
And then there's a cool one with like the deer. We looked up.
It's like the deer dance and like a kind of like a demon mask kind of guy. I asked around to see if they have a wild man tradition there, and it's sort of. I mean, it's definitely crossover with some of the winter wild man stuff.
And this is probably my very favorite one. It's like a temple with some red flowers.
Yeah, it's gorgeous.
With snow on it on the temple, and to me, I like those sort of like less kind of heavy-handed.
As far as Christmas themes.
As far as Christmas themes. And look, when you open it up, there's the paper is embossed with tiny fans.
Yeah,
you can't see it unless you look at it.
These are wonderfully made. They're beautifully printed. And like you said, it's just this really cool instant collection of Japanese Christmas cards.
And they're totally frameable. Like I would just frame all these because the artwork's so pretty and like.
Yeah.
But this way they'll stay together. The lady's name was Kiyomi. She was the one that received the card. So apparently she lived somewhere in Missouri and was like a Japanese transplant, I think, to the...
And how'd they end up with us?
I don't know. I think maybe I got them at an auction. I can't
remember.
But like,
now. How do things from Missouri end up at auctions in
Pennsylvania?
I
think from Japan to Missouri. Like
it's so interesting.
And I love the fact that somebody saved all these beautiful cards from the 70s. And what I like about them, too, is like you can look at this, and this could be from the 1940s, from the 70s, or contemporary.
Oh, yeah.
They really have like I really love art that has a
It's
totally timeless.
Yeah.
You can't really narrow this. Like this could be the 60s.
Sure.
I don't know.
Yeah. No, they're beautiful.
Yeah.
So I'll put a photo of one or more of these up in the show notes. And if you click on that, it'll take you to our Etsy shop where you can purchase that or other curiosities of the week, those that are left. I really, really like
You
it.
could repurpose them and send them out, or make like little.
Yeah, I would, for me, it would be hard to part with them, I think. You know
Yeah,
what
it's
I mean?
hard. I got to not kind of think about it.
Yeah. While you're at Etsy, check out our other stuff because we have artwork there. We have prints and originals. If I did the artwork for this episode, it'll be up there. Strange Familiars t-shirts, stickers, patches. One mug is left. There's only one Strange Familiars mug. Don't know when we'll make them again. So go ahead and grab that. Make a good Christmas present for somebody. My books are there. If you get them from us on Etsy, I'll sign them before we pack them up and ship them out. Allison has various ephemera and other things there. I'm going to start adding remark editions of my books on Etsy as well. And coming up, now this isn't going to be like Squatchtober. I'm not going to do one every day, and I'm not going to post them on Etsy the same time every day like I did for the Squatchtober stuff. But I am going to do some. Like I said, it's not going to be every day. We'll see how many. I'm going to do some Winter Wildman pictures. So some Bels Nichols, Hans Trapp, maybe a Krampus.
A Yeti?
You never know. You never know. We're going to do a series of Winter Wildman along the lines of the Squatchtober thing. So keep an eye out
Some
for
white
those.
Bigfoots?
You never know. You have to keep your eye out. And I'll put them up the same way I did for Squatchtober. I'll put them up on for patrons first. They'll go on Patreon. They'll go on Discord. Then they'll go to Instagram, Facebook, everywhere else. Just keep your eye out for some Winter Wildmen. Another series coming up that I'll be doing throughout December again. Not every day, not with the same intensity I did Squatchtober, but here and there. All right. Once again, next patron episode will be numbered 501, but that doesn't mean we're skipping episode 500. Episode 500 will be the first episode in December. I'm taking next week off as far as the regular episodes go in order to work on episode 500 and for Thanksgiving. And then we'll be back the first week of December with episode 500. Thanks for listening, everybody. We'll be back soon enough with more Strange Familiars. Strange Familiars is a production of Dark Holler Arts. Intro and background music is by Stone Breath. If you want to hear more or purchase music, you can go to stonebreath.bandcamp.com. We're on Instagram at Strange Familiars, one word, no underscore. Please give us a follow there. We're on Facebook, facebook.com/Strange Familiars. There's a Strange Familiars gathering group there as well. We can talk about spooky things and all things Strange Familiars related. For Strange Familiars merch, it's strangefamiliars.com/merch. And strangefamiliars.com is where you can find us all the time. By summer's end, the branches bend with leaves of gold and red. Many things will take to wing far away to fly. Soon the veil of the pale will part once again, and within the haunted wind the departed speak. By icy breeze, the swaying tree graves the cold wind blows. The rabbits run through the wood, tracing symbols on the snow. Beneath the ice swim silverfish. Through graves the cold wind blows. Encircled stone, I stand alone, praying into the wind. On lonely trail, I hear the tale of steps upon the snow. By frozen spring, I start to sing. Hail the winter's light. By hours past, I turn at last. Hail the winter's night. By footsteps fall, I hear the call of something far away. By holy will, the air is stirred, and you turn in your sleep. By leafless tree, I call to thee. Hail the winter's light. By fallen bough and rusty plough. Hail the winter's night. Winter bright, winter I call, winter with this wood. Hail, winter blow, winter come. By twist of thorn on frosty morn, there's blood upon the snow. By briar's bite on chilly night, there's red upon the white. The holly's reach will soon beseech new berries of red to bloom. Pine sharp point with crew adjoined, and sanguine rain will fall. Come, winter bright, winter I call, winter with this wood. Hail, winter blood, winter